Good afternoon, everyone. This is the news with b.c.begley. I am your host, and it's Tuesday, October 14th, 2025, and here are your top news stories for today. U.S. President Donald Trump is receiving rare bipartisan praise for brokering a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which included the release of 20 hostages. Speaking before the Knesset in Jerusalem and en route to a peace summit in Egypt, Trump's success is being hailed as a major foreign policy achievement of his second term. Former GOP rivals Nikki Haley and Mike Pence, who once criticized Trump's foreign policy, commended his steadfast support for Israel and his pursuit of peace. And some Democrats, included Representative Jared Moskowitz and Senator John Fetterman, also lauded the ceasefire as a breakthrough moment, Politico has reported. After last week's ceasefire with Israel, Hamas has begun deploying armed fighters and police across Gaza to reassert control over the war-torn territory. Reports and images show Hamas forces at hospitals, as well as violent clashes and executions targeting alleged collaborators and rival groups. While the renewed violence is not expected to derail the ceasefire immediately, it highlights deep concerns about Hamas's disarmament and the challenges facing the new regional stabilization force. United States President Donald Trump, asked about Hamas's actions, said the group was operating within the ceasefire's framework to maintain order amid widespread devastation, The Guardian has reported. Meanwhile, humanitarian conditions remain dire, despite the release of hostages and prisoners, as aid convoys struggle to reach millions of displaced Gazans in a landscape of collapsed law, rampant looting, and destroyed infrastructure. Major U.S. news organizations are rejecting a new Pentagon policy that requires journalists to pledge not to obtain unauthorized information and restricts access to certain areas without official escorts. Outlets including The Washington Post, The New York Times, CNN, Reuters, NPR, and The Atlantic say they will not sign the agreement, calling it an unconstitutional attack on press freedom. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who introduced the policy, mocked critics online and defended the rules as necessary for national security. The Pentagon Press Association condemned the move as an intimidation tactic that could criminalize normal reporting and restrict communication within the Defense Department, The Guardian has reported. While right-wing outlet One America News accepted the new terms, even conservative networks like Newsmax refused to sign, saying the policy is unnecessary and burdensome. A powerful nor'easter battered the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast for a third straight day Monday, bringing coastal flooding, strong winds, and heavy rain before slowly subsiding overnight. At least 3 people have died, including a Brooklyn woman that was struck by a wind-blown solar panel and 2 passengers in a Massachusetts plane crash. The storm caused major flooding in South Carolina and along the New Jersey and New York coast, where water levels reached moderate to major flood stages. Air travel was heavily disrupted, with thousands of flight delays and cancellations at major Northeast airports, CNN has reported. Wind gusts exceeding 50 miles per hour knocked out power to tens of thousands across multiple states, while emergency crews conducted water rescues in the Carolinas amid nearly 10 inches of rain in some areas. Former U.S. Presidents Joe Biden and Bill Clinton publicly praised President Donald Trump on Monday for brokering the Gaza peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Biden said he was, quote, deeply grateful and relieved that the last hostages had been freed, crediting President Trump and his team for helping secure the renewed ceasefire. Clinton echoed that sentiment, thanking President Trump, Qatar, and other regional actors for keeping negotiations on track and calling for lasting peace in the region. President Trump responded by thanking Clinton and reminiscing about their past friendship, noting that both Clintons attended his wedding, Axios has reported. Former President Barack Obama also welcomed the ceasefire last week, but he did not mention Trump by name, prompting the White House to highlight Trump's role in the agreement. Record flooding from the remnants of Typhoon Halong devastated western Alaska over the weekend, leaving at least 1 dead and displacing more than 1,400 residents. One woman was found dead in a village while dozens of others, along with 2 dogs, were rescued in that village and another. The storm brought hurricane-force winds up to 100 miles per hour, massive waves, and coastal flooding that damaged roads and over 50 community airports and local infrastructure. Emergency crews and the Alaska National Guard are responding, with residents housed in 12 shelters and search and rescue operations ongoing, Fox Weather has reported. Water levels in Kipnuk reached 6.6 feet above normal high tide, nearly 2 feet above the previous record, as officials continue to assess damage from both this storm and a prior system that had already flooded the region. A devastating explosion at the Accurate Energetic Systems plant in Tennessee has left the site in ruins, with no living witnesses and a hazardous scene stretching over half a square mile. Authorities warn that the investigation will take weeks or even months due to undetonated explosives and the need for painstaking foot-by-foot clearance before evidence recovery or victim identification can even begin. The blast, which triggered numerous smaller explosions, scattered debris, including potentially critical pieces of evidence, over long distances. The ATF is leading the investigation with its elite national response team, emphasizing both criminal accountability and learning from the incident to prevent future tragedies, CNN has reported. Officials stress that uncovering the cause will require meticulous, methodical work under constantly elevated safety conditions. Severe flooding from two tropical systems, Hurricane Priscilla and Tropical Storm Raymond, has devastated parts of Mexico, killing at least 64 people, leaving 65 missing, and damaging roughly 100,000 homes across 5 states. In Poza Rica, an oil town in Veracruz, floodwaters not only destroyed homes, but left thick oil residue on walls, vehicles, and trees, complicating the cleanup effort. Residents described seeing their homes striped with black oil after fleeing the rising water, while neighbors reported sirens from Pemex facilities signaling danger. Mexico has deployed around 10,000 troops and rescue teams to deliver aid by helicopter to over 200 isolated communities, NPR has reported. Officials said heavy rain, up to 24.7 inches in some areas, triggered the floods. While government warning systems were active, President Claudia Sheinbaum acknowledged that some locations remain difficult to access. Madagascar's president, André Rajoelina, has fled the country after weeks of protests led by young demonstrators, marking the second recent government toppled amid global Gen Z unrest. Opposition leader confirmed that Rajoelina left on Sunday after army units defected to join the protesters, though his current location still remains undisclosed. In a Facebook address, Rajoelina said he moved to a safe location to protect his life, but refused to formally resign, insisting he would not, quote, allow Madagascar to be destroyed. Reports indicate he departed on a French military aircraft, with French media suggesting a deal with President Emmanuel Macron, CNN has reported. The president's office has not responded to requests for comment. North Carolina Republican leaders announced plans to vote next week on redrawing the state's U.S. House districts, responding to President Trump's call to secure more GOP seats and counter Democratic efforts. The state's current map, enacted in 2023, gave Republicans 10 of 14 seats in 2024, up from a 7-7 split under the 2022 map. Only the 1st district, held by Democrat Don Davis, remains a true swing district, and Republicans aim to adjust its boundaries to potentially capture an 11th seat, though changes could affect GOP incumbents elsewhere. House Speaker Destin Hall framed the effort as defending Trump's electoral mandate, noting the president has won North Carolina in all of his presidential bids, Politico has reported. Democrats, including State House Leader Robert Reeves, criticized the move as an attempt to, quote, steal a congressional district and avoid accountability at the ballot box. All right, it's 24 past the hour, and here's a look at the live weather radar from the National Weather Service. And now here's the National Weather Forecast for today. A slight risk of excessive rainfall is expected over parts of Southern California and the Southern Rockies on Tuesday, with localized flash flooding and possible debris flows in recently burned areas. Heavy snow will impact the Sierra Nevada on Tuesday and the Northern Rockies on Wednesday. A coastal low off the mid-Atlantic will bring light rain to the northeast and mid-Atlantic, tapering off by Tuesday evening. Showers and thunderstorms will affect the Great Basin, the Central Rockies, Central Plains, and Southern High Plains, with rain spreading to the Northern Plains, Upper Mississippi Valley, and Great Lakes by Wednesday morning. Additional rain and snow will continue across the Northern and Central Rockies and the Plains through Wednesday, accompanied by embedded thunderstorms. President Trump is expected to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House on Friday to discuss weapon supplies, including whether the United States should provide long-range Tomahawk missiles. President Zelensky confirmed the visit and said he will propose a series of steps, meet defense companies, and possibly hold talks with lawmakers. A Ukrainian delegation has already departed for the United States. He and President Trump will be discussing air defense and long-range capabilities, with Tomahawks and additional Patriot systems raised in recent conversations. Trump said he might even warn or speak to Russia about the potential delivery, calling Tomahawks, quote, a new step of aggression, while the Kremlin expressed concern about some versions' ability to carry nuclear warheads, Axios has reported. Zelensky is due to arrive Thursday, and his chief of staff is in Washington preparing the visit. A Russian submarine surfaced off the coast of France last week and was later escorted by the Dutch Navy in the North Sea, reportedly due to a fuel leak. NATO chief Mark Rutte mocked the incident, calling the vessel, quote, a lone and broken Russian submarine limping home from patrol, and joking it resembled a hunt for a mechanic rather than a military mission. Russia's Black Sea Fleet denied the surfacing was due to a malfunction, saying the submarine was following navigation rules in the English Channel and completing a, quote, scheduled interfleet transit after Mediterranean operations. The sighting comes amid other reports of Russia's, quote, shadow fleet, aging, obscurely owned vessels operating without Western regulated insurance, which has raised environmental and safety concerns, Euronews has reported. NATO and French authorities are monitoring such vessels closely, emphasizing maritime vigilance and readiness to defend the alliance. Venezuela announced it will close its embassies in Norway and Australia and open new missions in Burkina Faso and Zimbabwe as part of a foreign service restructuring aimed at strengthening African alliances. The government described the closures as a, quote, strategic reassignation of resources, and said the consular services in Norway and Australia will continue through other diplomatic missions. Norway expressed regret over the embassy closure and emphasized its intention to maintain dialogue with Venezuela. The decision comes shortly after a Venezuelan opposition activist won the Nobel Peace Prize and amid growing tensions with the United States, Reuters has reported. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's government did not provide detailed timelines but said further information on consular arrangements would be shared in the coming days. President Donald Trump urged Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during a Knesset address, downplaying the corruption charges against him while praising his leadership. Despite Netanyahu's general unpopularity and public calls for his resignation over security failures, recent events like the Gaza ceasefire and hostage release have improved his standing. President Trump has previously pushed for Netanyahu's trial to be canceled, likening it to his own legal battles. The Knesset speech marks a significant intervention in Israel's domestic politics, Axios has reported. It also hints that President Trump may endorse Benjamin Netanyahu in the next Israeli election. Ezra Jin, founder and pastor of Zion Church, and dozens of church staff and members have been arrested in China amid a crackdown on unregistered Christian churches. Jin, a father of U.S. citizens, was detained Friday at his home, while more than 30 pastors and staff were arrested or made unreachable starting on Thursday, some facing criminal charges for, quote, illegal dissemination of religious information via the internet. Witnesses reported police used violence during the arrest, with at least one female pastor separated from her newborn. Zion Church, which serves thousands weekly and operates both online and in person, had previously been raided back in 2018 but reemerged despite ongoing government scrutiny, NPR has reported. Chinese officials defended the arrest as legal oversight of religious affairs, while church representatives and U.S. observers denounced the detentions, urging accountability and emphasizing that the church poses no political threat to China. World leaders gathered in Egypt to sign a Gaza ceasefire deal, with U.S. President Donald Trump and mediators from Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey leading the talks. Trump emphasized rebuilding Gaza as a hub of development, while insisting the territory must be demilitarized, framing reconstruction around Israeli security concerns. The deal was welcomed cautiously, as Israeli attacks killed at least 67,869 people and left much of Gaza in ruins, with widespread destruction of neighborhoods. Regional leaders, including the Egyptian president, stressed that lasting peace requires justice, equality, and the creation of a Palestinian state, though Israel has rejected such a state, Al Jazeera has reported. Trump's plan envisions governance by Palestinian experts under a, quote, board of peace supervised by President Trump and Tony Blair, raising questions about legitimacy, long-term sustainability, and local authority in post-war Gaza. 3 police officers were killed on Tuesday in a town in northern Italy when a house exploded during a forced eviction. The blast, triggered as officers tried to enter the 2-story building, caused the structure to collapse, burying them under the debris. At least 15 other officers and firefighters were injured, and 2 residents, a 60-year-old man and a woman, suspected of triggering the explosion, were hospitalized with burns. A 3rd sibling was later arrested without resistance. The family, involved in farming and cattle breeding, had long-standing financial troubles and had previously threatened to detonate gas cylinders during eviction attempts, the DW has reported. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed deep sorrow for the deaths and extended her condolences to the neighborhood and the emergency responders involved. Malaysia and the United States are supporting efforts to expand the ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia, aiming for a signing at the upcoming Asian Summit later this month, Malaysia's foreign minister has said on Tuesday. The 2 countries fought 5 days of combat in late July, killing dozens and displacing over 260,000 people, and then agreed to a truce after mediation by Malaysia's prime minister and pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump, who threatened to withhold trade privileges. Tensions have persisted, including landmine incidents in August, with Thailand accusing Cambodia of violating the truce, claims that Cambodia denies. Negotiations now focus on broadening the ceasefire to include landmine clearance, withdrawal of heavy weapons, and improved border management, the AP has reported. The expanded agreement, known as the Kuala Lumpur Accord, could be signed during the Asian Summit in Kuala Lumpur from October 26 through the 28th, which President Trump is scheduled to attend. Hamas has begun deploying fighters and police across Gaza to reassert control following the ceasefire with Israel. The group has targeted Israeli-backed militias and engaged in clashes with local families, though U.S. President Donald Trump indicated these actions fall within the ceasefire's parameters. The first phase of the agreement saw Hamas release 20 hostages, while Israel freed around 2,000 prisoners and allowed aid shipments into the territory, helping ease famine conditions. Gaza remains devastated, with much of the population concentrated in coastal areas and central towns, and law and order weakened after 2 years of conflict that has killed many Hamas commanders and destroyed infrastructure, The Guardian has reported. Hamas is attempting to restore security while offering amnesty for nonviolent gang members, though armed factions and looters remain a challenge, and most visible operations are now low profile compared to earlier staged events. Tens of thousands protested in Brussels on Tuesday against the Prime Minister's proposed austerity measures, prompting police to fire tear gas to disperse the crowds. Minor clashes occurred as demonstrators set off flares and smoke bombs, played drums and horns, and choked major roads and transportation hubs. The protest, organized by Belgium's 3 major trade unions, also coincided with nationwide strikes targeting cuts to pensions and health care. Organizers estimated 150,000 participants, while police put the number at 80,000, the AP has reported. The Prime Minister, a Flemish nationalist who took office back in February, aims to reduce spending to address Belgium's rising budget deficit, projected to reach 6.5% of GDP by the year 2030. Today is October 14th of 2025, and on this day in history, in the year 1066, the Battle of Hastings took place, where William the Conqueror defeated King Harold II of England. In the year 1947, U.S. Air Force Captain Chuck Yeager became the first person to break the sound barrier. And in the year 1994, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, Foreign Minister Shimon Peres, and Palestinian President Yasser Arafat were all jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts in the Oslo Accords. October the 14th is also National Dessert Day. Alright, it's 35 past the hour, and let's do a quick market update. The Nasdaq is down 0.15%. Gold is up 0.49%. Oil is down 1.19%. Bitcoin is down 2.32%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 0.36%, and the S&P 500 is down 0.13%. Hey, real quick, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all of our news stories and updates. And now let's get into the top national news stories for today. Former presidential nominee Mitt Romney said his family is, quote, heartbroken after his sister-in-law, Carrie Elizabeth Romney, died in Valencia, California on Friday at the age of 64. Authorities found her body near a shopping mall parking garage, but it is currently unclear whether she jumped or whether she fell from the multi-story structure. Foul play does not appear to be involved, and the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office has listed her cause of death as, quote, deferred, pending further investigation. Carrie had recently separated from Romney's brother, Scott Romney, who filed for divorce in June after 8 years of marriage. She had been seeking spousal support, which Scott opposed, and requested to resume using her maiden name, Carrie Elizabeth Demas. The couple married in 2016 and largely kept their relationship private. Mitt Romney described Carrie as bringing, quote, warmth and love to all our lives, and asked for privacy during this difficult time. Scott Romney, who is 81 years old, is an attorney in Michigan and has served on several corporate boards, the New York Post has reported. Mitt Romney, who ran for president back in 2012 and served as a U.S. Senator from Utah, has been a prominent critic of President Donald Trump and notably voted to convict Trump in both impeachment trials. California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill that would have allowed universities to give descendants of slaves a special consideration in admissions, saying it was unnecessary because colleges already have that authority. The veto is viewed as a setback for reparations efforts. The bill, proposed by the Democratic Assemblyman Isaac Bryan, would have permitted but not required institutions to provide such preferences. Newsom also vetoed other reparations-related bills on housing, property restitution, and business licenses, citing legal, practical, and financial concerns, Newsweek has reported. His decision comes amid broader national debates over diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, including actions by the Trump administration targeting universities. The government shutdown, now entering its third week, shows no signs of resolution as Democrats and Republicans continue to blame each other. Vice President J.D. Vance criticized Democrats' approach as, quote, hostage-taking, while Senate votes on a funding measure have repeatedly failed to reach the 60-vote threshold. Democrats insist they will not support reopening the government without extending health insurance tax credits. Meanwhile, the Trump administration began layoffs affecting over 4,000 federal workers, though some notices to the CDC employees were later rescinded in error, CBS News has reported. Essential payments for the military are being insured, but other federal workers remain unpaid, and Smithsonian museums, research centers, and the National Zoo have all closed due to the shutdown. 4 people have been arrested in connection with a mass shooting in Leland, Mississippi that left 6 dead and over a dozen injured during homecoming weekend. Travion Powell, William Bryant, and Morgan Lattimore face capital murder charges, while LaToya Powell is charged with attempted murder, this according to the FBI. It is unclear whether the suspects have legal representation. The FBI stated that additional arrests are possible and urged anyone with information to come forward, CBS News has reported. The shooting, one of several deadly incidents in Mississippi that weekend, occurred shortly after a high school football game. New York Attorney General Letitia James made her first public appearance since being indicted on federal fraud charges, speaking at a rally for mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani in Washington Heights. James denounced what she called the politicization of justice and vowed not to be silenced, warning of threats to democracy while receiving loud applause from supporters. She faces bank fraud and false statements charges over a 2020 Virginia home purchase, which prosecutors claim violated mortgage rules by being rented out. James has called the charges baseless and part of political retribution linked to President Trump, against whom she has frequently sued, ABC7 New York has reported. The rally also highlighted Mamdani's campaign, portraying him as a progressive challenger to Trump-aligned forces and a candidate focused on affordability and reform. A former student allegedly stabbed 3 staff members and planted 2 pipe bombs at the Switzer Learning Center in Torrance, California. The attack occurred at 8:15 a.m. local time, with 2 victims taken to Harbor General Hospital for non-life-threatening injuries and a third treated on the scene. The suspect was arrested and disclosed the locations of the pipe bombs, which were then safely rendered inert by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Bomb Squad. Police have confirmed that there is no ongoing threat and are continuing their investigation, though the suspect's identity, age, and motive have not yet been released, ABC News has reported. Authorities thank the community and the responding agencies for their cooperation and emphasize that public safety remains a top priority. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office has reaffirmed that Ellen Greenberg's 2011 death was a suicide, despite her sustaining 20 stab wounds and a knife found in her chest. Greenberg, a 27-year-old first-grade teacher, was found dead in her locked apartment after returning home early due to a snowstorm. Her family has long disputed the ruling, citing evidence they say contradicts suicide, including wound placement, bruises, missing surveillance footage, and a locked door. Chief Medical Examiner Lindsay Simon concluded that Greenberg, who suffered from anxiety, was capable of inflicting the injuries herself and found no evidence of a struggle or abuse by her fiancé, Fox News has reported. The ruling has sparked outrage from Greenberg's family and attorney, who vowed to continue seeking justice through other avenues. California will no longer allow the sale of new Glock handguns after Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 1127 into law. The bill targets Glocks because their design can be easily modified with a 3D printed Glock switch to fire fully automatic, even though such switches are already illegal. The law does not ban possession or the resale of used Glocks, but seeks to push the manufacturer to redesign the gun so it can't be converted. The legislation gained support after several shootings, including the 2022 killing of Greg Grimes, who was shot multiple times with a modified Glock, CBS News has reported. Republicans opposed the bill, arguing it disproportionately restricts access to one of California's most popular handguns. A small plane crashed onto Route 195 in Dartmouth, Massachusetts on Monday, killing a husband and a wife and shutting down both sides of the highway for hours. The victims, 68-year-old Thomas Perkins and 66-year-old Agatha Perkins from Middletown, Rhode Island, were found in the fuselage of their Socata TBM 700 aircraft, which had burst into flames in the median. A woman driving on the highway was struck by part of the wreckage and then taken to a hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The plane had departed from New Bedford Regional Airport en route to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the crash, though it is unclear if weather from the nor'easter played a role, CBS News has reported. The Perkins were well known within their community for their work with the Kirby Perkins construction and contributions to local schools. Jonathan Jan, a 29-year-old who killed 2 detainees and wounded another at a Dallas ICE facility in September before taking his own life, was described by his parents as, quote, completely normal before returning to Texas from Washington State. Records reveal he believed he suffered from radiation sickness and was allergic to plastic. He wore gloves to avoid contact with plastic and practiced target shooting with a newly purchased rifle in Oklahoma shortly before the attack. Jan, who had no diagnosed mental or physical conditions, was socially isolated, unemployed, and spent much of his time playing computer games. The attack victims were Norlin Fuentes, 37, Miguel Garcia Hernandez, 32, and Jose Andres Molina, who was wounded but then released, CBS News has reported. Investigators found no clear motive, though Jan left notes and inscribed anti-ICE on a bullet, indicating a desire to ambush and terrorize ICE agents. Okay, everyone, that is our show for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I will see you all tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for another episode of The News with b.c.begley. And it's the National Dessert Day, so everyone go out and find a dessert. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon.